Today on Waiting for the Encore, my guest is Frenchie Smith. Frenchie is a prolific producer and enthusiastic as they come about making music. I've worked with him many times and always enjoy it when we get together. So please enjoy my conversation with Frenchie Smith.
Frenchie Smith, thank you for joining me on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon here. How are you?
I'm great. Sam Pace, one of the artists that I've learned more about the lesson that Sam, you've taught me is to resist not, and I'm so grateful for that. But
Wow.
It's great to be here with you and partake in this podcast.
So what is the new norm for you, Frenchie? How has COVID lockdown treated you over the last, what are we on, 5 months now? And I'm sure it's evolved from the start to now, but what's the new norm for you and your family and work and all that stuff?
Well, there's a few things I'll get to. It's I don't know if funny is the word, but for us and the way that we operate the bubble, things are different, but they're also the same. And the bubble is co-owned by Alex Lyon and myself, and the amount of detail and just excellence that Alex committed to in this property, in this business that he owns, is just on such a high level that out of respect and just and out of awe of having a key to the building to be able to make noise in here, I've always kept it clean. So I think the difference now is people have snacks outside. They drink their bottled waters outside because you can't really put a mask on a half-eaten piece of pizza. So there's a social distancing element, but there's also just being a little in tune with the nature of just airborne whatever. So we're having our snacks outside, and people generally just stick to the station and the instrument that they're playing, and the reality is that I have developed an hour and a half opening procedure and a closing procedure that involves a pretty extensive cleaning, and it's just how I can think about what we do, and that the bubble and the origins of the bubble. The name of the bubble is inspired that when you're in the bubble, and that includes me and artists like yourself, Sam, is that you're safe, that the BS does not exist in there, and things that you want to try and the way you want to express yourself is okay. And so no idea is a bad idea. The only bad idea is the one that you're feeling and you don't speak up and say. And so now that's extends into a musical mindset, but also very much a physical one. So, of course, there's screening processes, and but the artist and myself always have a uncanny ability to always be on the same page, and no one really BS's each other. So if somebody's sick or they're caring for someone that's sick, and guess what? We'll just do that session at another time.
Yeah. You hear a lot about all the procedural stuff that's necessary with COVID, but just as you said that, an hour and a half, and even if it's just an hour before and after the fact, how much of our time and economy is now devoted to just cleaning and making sure things around us are cleaning. It's crazy to think how much time as a civilization, some people probably don't, but those of us who take it very seriously, how much of our time and economy is now devoted to cleaning and keeping things sanitary and all that stuff. It's crazy.
I don't have a complaint about it. I think that there's several nightclubs that I've been into, and I'm really grateful in the career I've had as a musician. And I started playing gigs professionally, if you loosely call that professionally, probably 1991. And the just going into a bathroom at a well-respected rock club in many cities around the world has been like a war zone. And
That's true.
so there was definitely room for improvement. And there's definitely some amazing recording studios in the world, and they are looked after um, in a tidy way, and that, you know, they're not supposed to be so sterile that you're removed from seeing yourself in that environment and fitting. But the reality that, you know, there's a band and they're at, say, this level, and that's a lot to be proud of. You don't want to go into a nasty environment and have the truth that you're really down here looking you in the eye during a 12-hour session and just seeing it be gross, and that there was no sense of anticipation of your arrival, you know, that people only thought about you, you know, right as you were there. I think it's cool. For me, the amount of time that it takes and that I'm putting into it, it just makes me, it's just kind of an affirmation of what we've been trying to do at the Bubble for years on it's all encompassing to the spirit of the recording studio and what goes into it. And while I'm cleaning, it makes me look at the building in a new way. I come up with new ideas on how to capture sounds. It's not some kind of brain dead asinine task I have to do. I do it with a sense of pride. And I am getting reports that there are, maybe it's not just inclusive to a recording studio, but there are artist spaces that people are getting together in. And after people wearing masks, they're not really looking at anything else. And that hurts me to hear that. And we do not want to mirror that kind of lackluster excitement for people to have a healthy environment.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I love working with you, French, is you always are thinking about the artists and what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and that's what keeps me coming back. And you mentioned some of your early years, and I want to get to that, but I want to get to your even earlier years because we have worked together, and I do know some stuff about you, but there is some other stuff I do not know about you, and I want to get to some of that. I did Wikipedia you, so there are some things I learned about you last night that I'd like to get into, but why don't you tell me and the listeners a little bit about kind of where you come from, and also how music was just an integral part of your life coming up, and what music specifically really kind of got you going and kept you going and all that.
Well, at an early age, MTV definitely entered. It debuted, you know, really on cable, and cable was kind of a new thing. So some of us had cable, some of us didn't, and we didn't have cable consistently at our house. It was something my mom was constantly kind of figuring out if she could afford or not.
Mm-hmm.
However, the nature of the way people consume music, there was, you know, this is early 80s, early 80s, the way people consume music and the companionship and the social element that went with it. You know, we all looked like the kids from Stranger Things, my buddies and myself, and we would gather somewhere at whatever family was okay with 5 kids coming over, riding their bikes over and blasting MTV through the stereo speakers, and you know, and we just would just study what was happening. And
So were your formative years right as MTV was kind of coming?
Oh, sure.
Wow.
So I was living in a small city called Durant, Oklahoma, and at the time, it probably had about, you know, maybe 12,000 people living there. And so this is all a pre-YouTube world, pre-internet world. So, you know, when you heard a song come on or you heard and saw the imagery of all these artists just blowing up on MTV, was just wild culture, you know, just infusing itself into my imagination. And it didn't take me too long at 10, 11 years old to realize that wherever I was, no disrespect to any small city in America or the city I grew up in. It wasn't going to be my long-term plan to be there. I knew that whatever my fate was I was going to start a band and go rock out.
So
So
you knew that at a young age, huh?
I knew that at a young age.
Nice.
And so any kind of musical instrument I could get my hands on, I was all about it. I definitely had zero interest in what was happening at school. My imagination was something that, obviously now you could say that all this stuff is not that mind blowing, but at the time, to be in a small city in America and try to tell your teachers that you want to rock the hell out for your career was pretty, not only an odd thing to say that people, but it also kind of came with a dangerous element, that they might think that you are a hedonistic child or a devil worshiper or a vegetarian. And to their dismay, I was a future hedonistic individual. I had not even scratched the surface on how the hell I was going to rock out and stick my dick in the potatoes, to quote the Beastie Boys. Beastie Boys, in fact, always have great poetry. But I was just all about it. And so you fast forward to once I graduated from high school, I'd heard about Austin, Texas, which was about 6 hours away. And I think I had about $500 and a couch I could stay on, through the generosity of my sister's boyfriend at the time, this man, Robert Metcalf. He was like, okay, yeah, he could stay on my couch, and that $500 and 60 days of couch surfing was what I needed to kind of at least get settled in Austin and start getting used to living in a bigger city, and also trying to figure out how to penetrate what it was to be involved with other musical people, and kind of how to find them.
One thing, come right back to that spot. One thing you mentioned was the mind-blowing fact, and I think all of us artists or people who are obsessed with music or performance or anything of that nature, we have our minds blown at those young ages, and we keep searching for more of that mind blow. You know what I mean? And as you're saying that, I was thinking, our kiddos in this generation, I'm sure, I watch my 4-year-old watch movies, and at times I can see her mind being blown here or there. But you wonder, by the time they get to adolescence, where you're your most formative in terms of you can take control of what you're going to do with your time more so, because you have, you can do what you want more and start pursuing things as you turn 9, 10, 11, 12. And by the time they get to that age, are they going to be as open or available to have their mind blown because of such, by the time they get to 10, aren't most kids going to be just overloaded already by media and all this stuff? Will they be able to have their minds blown in a way that's going to, inform them into their adulthood? And I just thought of that as you were saying that. So
sure.
Because I that's exactly what thrust me into music, was having my mind blown, and then finding that journey, continuing down that path. Wait a minute, how did that person do that? And then you find out how they did that, and then you keep exposing yourself. And maybe all kids will still be able to access that, but when it's less frequent, like when you did it, and then it was a little bit more frequent when I did it, because but it was still the 90s when I was growing up in that age.
Sure.
By now, I wonder if that's still available for kiddos, and we'll see. But if you had a comment on that, you can go ahead. I was going to continue with that.
Well, I think just the quick thing I would say on that is that having at any age, an ageless sentiment, having your mind blown is seeing excellence in others. Mm-hmm. And seeing excellence in others is a gateway to having a sense of belonging and self-discovery and self-value. So if if a young mind or an old mind has lost the ability to find awe in anything, we could have dulled down our ability to see like our own inner awesomeness. And I'm not talking about an arrogance or I'm awesome because I woke up, but just those defining things. So, but that is something that I think that's something that, parents will want to monitor. And there's nothing, as we age, there's nothing that kind of helps you through a weird passing moment than just having a kind of totally. I mean, like there's so many of them, but I mean, if I'm stuck in traffic or whatever's going on, and just for the heck of it, I turn on the radio and it's the drum fill from Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. I'm like, you know what? Today was a little hard. I'm good now.
That's
whatever.
That's trending right now. Did you see that?
I did, and
so maybe that's proof right there that those kids are in their teen years and they're having their mind blown by it. So maybe we're worrying all for naught.
But and it's also it's also kind of older technology, and an older kind of production mindset that is kind of blowing their minds too. So it may not sound just like a big blues rock riff, but the song isn't completely programmed. Mm-hmm. There is a drum loop in it, and the rest of it is just performances actually played. Mm. So
you get to Austin, and then you start your quest for rock and roll, and you had some bands. You were 16 Deluxe. Did that become the main project right off the bat, or did it take a few years to get that going?
Oh yeah, that one is I probably, geez, in a kind of music industry way, probably any groups I'd played with, we really weren't consistent and gigging often enough to really say that it was a professional band, but they were all just massive learning moments, what it is to rehearse, what it is to put material together, how to perform with people, how to perform on stage, how not to perform on stage, just the baby steps of that, and how to book a gig, how to make posters, how to promote, how to conduct yourself. Back then, over the phone, talking to someone twice your age, trying to book your band, and how to know how to talk with them and not say too much to let them know what a dork and loser I was, or how much I just didn't know how it worked. Mm-hmm. It just, and then, but 16 Deluxe, to be fair, was the first band I was in that was releasing music with record labels and doing tours and more professional kind of standard stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you guys were a major label. You guys got on a major label together. Is that right?
That happened eventually, but in our most truest form, we were on and what I mean by the most true form, I don't think that we had the right kind of mindset to get on a major label and know what that could become for us, or how we could drive that kind of opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's fair to say that I was comfortable with that. As a band, as a whole, was it exactly where we belonged? Probably not. And so in our most true form, the record label we were on was owned by King Coffee from the Butthole Surfers. And he and his husband, Craig Stewart, ran the label. And Craig got really supportive and was a mentor to us, and to have a legend like the drummer of the Butthole Surfers say, "This is the band I'm going to get behind. We're doing this." It to this day, that being involved with Trent Syndicate Records was, I have not experienced such a value shift since. What as an individual, I'm very honest with myself. I was just a fella in a band, and the next thing I know, I'm in a band, and we're partners with King Coffee from the Butthole Surfers. That was big deal.
Yeah. And so how long was that run? How long was the run with 16 Deluxe? And then did it kind of just come apart naturally and just kind of, the way bands tend to do?
Sure.
Or was there major fireworks that you want to tell us about? And
I mean, I think the happy ending is that we will still play shows together.
Yeah, you guys are doing stuff again, so it couldn't have been that bad.
But the prime of the band was 6 years, and then now, if we play shows together, all of us have done different musical projects, and so when we come back to that band, it's we're the best tribute band to that band. Mm-hmm. So, but as a guitar player, Sam, I pushed my guitar playing. So if I was playing guitar a certain way at 22 years old, well, at 48 years old, I can run circles around that kid.
Right.
But you have to honor what those songs were. So you don't slip in the Eddie Van Halen, breakdown when it's not where those songs were coming from. So mm-hmm. There's such a simplicity to it that it's nice coming back to those songs and just working purely on dynamics and being able to hear the voices and how do we all sound together. And and frankly, for me to actually address my band members in that band, like, hey, I'm not going to play this section this loud. I want to hear you. And they go, who are you? I go, I'm your biggest fan. So it's quite endearing.
Yeah, that's one thing. As young guitar players, we all usually turn it up pretty loud. So you were in Young Heart Attack. Is that the right?
Yes, right? Young Heart Attack, and that involved a 16 Deluxe band member, Stephen Hall, who was playing drums in the band, and then switched to bass in Young Heart Attack. And I would say that Stephen had a real vision on how that band was going to work, and he was on fire, and he found commonality with a super rock individual named Chris Hodge, and he and Chris Hodge really, I think they just kind of knew the smell of it. They just knew the aura of the band, and all of a sudden material started coming together. And I was probably mentally not as strong as when 16 Deluxe had quit playing together, I had a lot of equity in that. And when that ceased to exist, there was part of me that was a little bit lost. And so socially, I didn't really have much else going on. So they just told me I was going to be in the band. And so that's what I did.
And I saw on the Wikipedia, did you guys tour with Motorhead? Is that right?
Sure did. Yeah.
So I didn't know that about you. So how many shows did you guys do with Motorhead?
Well, there was an entire tour over that did not include Ireland, but all of England, Wales, and Scotland, and then we went inland to into Europe for a few dates. So I believe Belgium, some dates in the Netherlands. So any good rock fan is going to ask the obvious question: Did you glean anything or have any good stories, or not really get much out of Lemmy? Anything you can tell us about being on the road with Lemmy and sure,
Sonic Motorhead?
Well, one of the things that that band, they had a road crew with them, and they even have material about the road crew.
I've seen that, yeah.
So their road crew is the people that surrounded the band, that worked with the band, that did the lights, they just they helped them get from city to city. They were family. And so all of a sudden they were picking up on the vibe that I was not drinking anywhere, backstage or on stage. And not that that's a badge of honor, but they looked at me closely. And then once they realized I wasn't some kind of cop, then they were a little more relaxed about me. And then there was one show that I was doing some kind of fabulous kind of, guitar spin and, twirling around, just being a big ham on stage. And I sensed this kind of presence, to my right, kind of off stage in the shadows. And I looked over, and Lemmy was over there doing my same moves right at me. And that was a buzz.
Wow.
But I'm sure he called a lot of people son. But we did record together after that. He did like the band.
Wow.
And so he came to Austin, and then I took him shopping for cowboy clothes. We went to Shepler's. It's a Western wear store. So I had this crappy station wagon at the time, and so I picked him up at the hotel. We went to Shepler's and shopping together. Just
wow.
It was like the waters parted when the two of us walked in. Like, no one knew what was going on. Maybe they didn't really know who he was, but he obviously had like this kind of presence, and not a threatening one. But one of the things about recording with him is when he got his hands on an acoustic guitar, he had a very soft kind of voice. And so when he was showing song ideas, I understood that certainly there's this kind of visible rock figure that loves blistering big rhythms and, kick-ass riffs. But at his core, what I understood was that he was a flower child and just a really electric folk player. That was mind-blowing. Just to see that in his musical x-rays, just playing acoustic guitar with him one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, I've watched his documentary a couple of times and, listened to a lot of Motorhead, and he's got so much respect for the roots of rock and roll. So I guess you saying that doesn't really surprise me that much. And every report I've had, gotten from over the years is that he was just a sweet guy inside, obviously an iconic roughneck in terms of his image, but all in all, pretty sweet guy and definitely, respected where the music came from and all that. So I guess it's interesting to hear, but not as surprising as I might think. He seems to have a sensibility to him.
But he also paid a lot of really heavy dues, I mean, you obviously read in White Line Fever where he's like this. Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones said, "Oh yeah, drop in my house in London anytime." Well, when Ron Wood said that, he was a young Ron Wood, and this is a young Lemmy, and so he leaves Wales and pops into the address. The person who answers the door is Ron's mom. So Ron comes back from playing shows with he might have been playing with I don't even know if they would have had the Small Faces yet. He might have been playing with
Rod Stewart or something. Not yet. Was he playing with Rod Stewart?
Well, it could have been the Jeff Beck group. So I mean, it's like that weird dividing line of where Yardbirds split up, Led Zeppelin starts getting formed, and then there's the Jeff Beck group, and then Small Faces. It's a cool intersection, all of that British rock.
Yeah.
And then Ron Wood comes home, and like Lemmy's just there hanging out with his mom. He's like, "Hey, she's my mom. What are you doing here?" He's like, "He's nice." and then obviously one of his first big gigs is being a roadie for Jimi Hendrix, and then forming Hawkwind. So he had many lives before Motorhead was a thing. Right. So But yeah, pretty fascinating character, and kind of just an eye-opening thing. Like his image is quite audacious, but the core of what he is was a very curious person and someone that loved art, and that sustained him a long time for a pretty alternative lifestyle. He lived a long time.
Yes, he did. So kind of getting back to you and after the bands, we're kind of nearing their end. I guess that kind of brings us to when you were getting the studio going that so many people in Austin love, and now you're in your second, well, maybe actually probably more than that. It's your newest incarnation of it, but
Sure.
it's more than two, right? It's been 3 or 4. So maybe you can kind of take us through the bubble and its evolution, but also as you kind of take us through that, maybe you can kind of pepper in how the city of Austin kind of, influenced the studio, influenced you as you've seen Austin grow. It's one of the fastest, most, intensely growing cities in America in the last 25 years. And you've had a beautiful bubble, a perfect title for the studio and the idea. And so you can kind of take us through that journey.
Well, the first location for the studio was basically at the time was well, the address is still South First and Slaughter, that area of town. And at the time, that was you were really leaving civilization. So now it's quite a developed area. So at the time, it was a pretty large warehouse complex, and so there were recording rooms, and it was a kind of a headquarters for 16 Deluxe. So it was recording, rehearsal. We had different bands that we were close with that rehearsed there, and it was just a social thing. And so it became clear that the studio needed to, if it was going to, the recordings themselves were going to have to get into a space that narrowed down the focus. It's like, okay, this recording space, right? We're making T-shirts here. We have bands rehearsing. It was way too much traffic to be able to have a quality recording session at any moment. You just never knew what was going to happen. However, the randomness of that, I think, gave me a buffer to find out if I liked it or not. It was I think a big mistake people make is they just buy tons and tons and tons and tons of recording gear, and they start recording people, and then they find out that the fantasy of that versus the reality of that are two different things. And the fantasy is that somehow the record producer is just the boss. Like you're the boss of the Dallas Cowboys and you just yell at people what to do. Or you're a film producer and you just yell at actors and actresses or something, or screenwriters. Yeah. But the reality is the producers is very much like a fallen politician. They have less power, and they don't have power until there's unity amongst a group of people. And I'm not saying that in any kind of defeatist way. I'm saying as a badge of honor. Like I don't do what I do well until the project and everybody in it is going, hey, we're really doing something here. Because if it was just about my sensibilities, well, I should go form my own band and record it and put those records out. So for a true collaboration, it doesn't matter if I used some kind of recording trick on the last 20 records and then I try to apply that on a new record today and it doesn't work. Well, that's okay. Try another path. So the not only did the intent and the focus on recording get greater, but it was time for it to get into another location to narrow down just what the intentions of the space were. So that's when the studio moved to East 7th Street, across the street from the Texas State Cemetery. And chronologically, that was probably 98 until 2001. So 2001, we're in East 7th, and literally, to the best of my knowledge, it was the first indie rock, alternative rock institution east of the highway. At that time, there were no counterculture or rock and roll nightclubs or anything trendy of the such, much less there was no Target or Whole Foods or all the condos that are there. And a location like Hotel Vegas was very edgy, and that was just behind our rental property. So we were there for a while, and it was kind of exciting and a little bit scary. But I knew that we were what we were doing was kind of unusual for the neighborhood, and so I got to know other business owners in the neighborhood. You know, El Milagro Chip Company. There was if the bands wanted to go out and have a drink and go get a beer or something at the end of the session, we would try to go mingle. You know, make pals in the neighborhood the studio was in. Definitely, different restaurants that were over there. So we tried to infuse, our flux of business into the micro community that we were a part of. At that point, we kind of came to an impasse because the recording studio had, there's so many things that make a recording studio great. Some of it is just, do you have enough gear to accomplish sonic goals? So a lot of the gear started accumulating, and really just buying tons and tons and tons of audio gear with no regard whether it was a good business model or not. I knew it was going to make music record well. Yeah. And then I'd also come to terms with the fact that just because my mom thought I was special, it didn't mean that I should ignore tried and true, recording techniques that my favorite records, would have used. So it was a little bit of a surrender and deeper investment, and so the recording gear and the recording chains were drum kits and guitars and voices and the recording console, mixing console. All that stuff was just getting better and better and better. But there were some inherent limitations in the acoustic space. So at that time, Alex Lyon was a working engineer at the studio, and he had and has a hustle in him that really mirrored the dreamer spirit where I was coming from. But he actually had a bit more of a adult mindset. He goes, look, we're spending all this money on rent. Let's get in. Let's put that into equity and get move into some spaces that we can really fine tune. And then to me, that's really when that's when the spirit of the company was really born. Was some younger buck that I used to just boss around all of a sudden became my boss. That was an eye-opening experience.
Oh, nice.
So
what year was that in roughly?
Well, that was a transitional time. So that was around 2004 that we were going to be, getting the heck out of the old space and start developing this new space. So there was a kind of an overlap of still having the studio on 7th Street, and then while the new space on Red River was getting fine-tuned, and a year-long build-out happened in that space, and then that's when we started having an acoustician, Mark Genfan, who not only designed that space but also designed the current space we're in now, and but I mean, just huge learning curves, and Alex buying property at that time is absolutely why we're a studio now. Mm-hmm. Without his leadership, I would have just been thinking about guitar amps and, how to comb my hair, just silly things.
Yeah.
Or the craft of the records,
Right. And you
I
need
would be
both.
buried in that.
Yeah. That's a lot of, it's good you guys were able to work together, be two parts of the brain, because it's a big brain to manage a studio that works well. And you guys have done it real well for a long time. So it would be tough to try to do both those things at the same time. So it's nice that you guys found each other. So,
Sure.
so you're able to move up north. What year did you guys move to kind of north central Austin there?
So the first session at the property, the current location, different building, current location, was October of 2005. So that is roughly 7 years after the whole thing kind of started. So,
Wow.
so it was, those 7 years just flew by. And I think in that time frame, something I said earlier was, I think we were all aware that we really enjoyed collaborating with people. We enjoyed recording people. We enjoyed the imagination that went into the recordings. We weren't immune to the fact that if it sounds bad, we sound bad. It's like that ownership of, well, if there's something not clicking on the recording, it's because we haven't helped solve some kind of little mystery here. Let's try harder. So it wasn't a situation where we went in with this giant figure of money, had the best recording gear in the world, and then had to work backwards to figure out how to make it all make sense. It was very streamlined and very punk rock the way it all started. I mean, just kind of like a similar thing when you're auditioning, as a solo artist or even a band, you're auditioning different players to come over. They say it's a drummer and they show up with the nicest drum kit in the world, but they don't really have a good sound. Or like some bass player with some massive science fiction bass, set up and 10 strings on the thing, but it's just an opportunity for them to hit the weirdest note choices. Or guitar players that have tons and tons of all these options, but they just don't have a general tone that glues their existence together. So that's probably me. Whoops. But we were able to make recordings sound decent enough that we could take ourselves seriously and not get kicked out of nightclubs when we went to go see the bands we were working with play. There was a sense of community and support.
Well, you guys, I'm sure we could talk about studio stories for hours on end, but I was fortunate to work in the last couple years at the newest location at the old building, which was a wonderful place to record. Tons of good juju in there. And then I was fortunate enough to be one of the first people to record in the new facility, which is just beautiful, pristine. Anyone who's watching this and thinking about recording there should definitely take a look at it. And it's really beautiful. Congratulations. I know it's not quite super new anymore, but you guys are still a first year or two, right? First 18 months here?
Something like, it's, maybe so it's August now. So, about 15 months. And it's lived in enough now that, I feel like I'm starting to understand some of the tone of the rooms and some things that I was really anxious to figure out. Like I wanted to know it. And we had 14 years in the previous space, simultaneous years. And then you just take those good memories and that goodwill and you move into a new recording space and you just kind of let go and try to find out what it's like to create in this other space and what kind of incidental moments present themselves. Random and, maybe something that you actually willfully came up with, but maybe accidental discoveries. So I think there's a lot of perfect blend of happenstance and willful sonic intentions happening, but certainly feeling a lot more lived in. The studio's starting to feel like a leather jacket that's got a couple of creases
right
off the rack.
I'm excited to get back in there. Couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
10
23rd
days.
of August.
Very excited to get back in there. Well, like I said, Frenchie, I'm sure we could talk about tons of topics for a very long time. I just want to kind of close things out here with.
Well, I do want to interrupt you if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of language can I use on this thing?
Oh, any language. There's no censorship.
Okay. I want to. I do want to explain something that that connectivity is not just or producing is not just a one directed thing or communication. It's the symbiosis. It's the constant flow, much like an electrical current. When you plug your amp into the wall, right, it would be innocent enough to think that you're just drawing current from the wall. But a guitar amp or any electrical device is not only drawing current, but it's also sending current. It moves so fast and it's constantly moving. And that's true production. When I do my job well enough that I can respect what I represented that moment, what I told people I could do. You know what I mean? Like those incidental moments where you're like, hey, I'm not full of BS. I really did it. Mm-hmm. Those are defining moments for me that I recheck in why I do this, and then why I believe in myself and my art is in believing in others. Mm-hmm. So it's about it's a me thing. I got to be centered. So I'm strong to believe in others. But it is worth mentioning on this podcast that one thing that you said to me that made me so mad at you. That
yes, this is what I want. This is the stuff I want, Richard.
This was, you were going to rehearse your vocal. You just finished up some vocals on a particular song, and it doesn't matter what song, because you were going to kind of cleanse your mind and get ready for the next song. And you had 15 minutes that you were going to shift gears, take the headphones off, go through some exercises, and get prepared to sing the next song. And that's when you let me know that why don't I make good time out of my timeshare with you and go ahead and do a little bit of badass mixing while I had the time. And so I thought to myself, this kid, he doesn't know how this works. It's a 5-minute song. Like, no, you can't mix a 5-minute song in 15 minutes. And then I felt a sense of shame. And I knew that there was a godly thing in you. Okay. And that what you said was innocent. And it was matter of fact. And my thought that I didn't say to you, you can't mix something in 15 minutes. That was bullshit. That was indoctrinating. It was basically tattooed in me. And it wasn't a rule I came up with. It wasn't a rule that you knew about. Why couldn't? What inherent problem do I actually have with looking at a 5-minute song and like going absolutely mental and using every bit of passion and grinding my teeth together to present a 5-minute song and spend 15 minutes on it, and without any hesitation or resistance? What was wrong with that concept? And to this day, I'm looking for 15 minutes. I'm looking for the 15 minutes to find out if I can believe my own bullshit. Why do I need a day to do this? Why do I need an hour to do that? What is so mind-blowing that I create resistance? And I think you helped me see blockage and move past it. And you never even knew I was mad at you, that you're almost grounded, Junior. But it's a brotherly thing, and I will never forget it.
Oh, well, excellent. I'm glad my ignorance inspired you to change. But yeah,
It
it's
was just
just,
truly inspiration. And
yeah.
you believed that I could do it. And since you believed it, I was like, I might as well believe it too. But it's a connectivity thing.
Hmm.
And there's always sense to grow. And who was I with 20 years of record making experience to tell anybody at every second of the day how it all goes? That's just BS.
Well, I think that speaks volumes to your humility, and from my perspective, it's strictly comes down to efficiency of fiscal. You know what I mean? It's like, and you're such a, you're what you get such good bang for your buck working with you. That's why I've been coming back to you the last couple of years. But I
Well,
wanted,
I'm glad we covered that. And
well, I appreciate that, Frenchie. Thank you. But I wanted to round out this thing with kind of some micro macro examination of Austin and the music scene and where we are and where we're going. And it's kind of a big matzo ball, but let's use that frame of mind you just put forth to try to, put some feelings on and thoughts of what the experience you have and the observations you're making. We had talked about, before any of this COVID stuff happened, about some of the things I was, experiencing vis-a-vis the Austin, whatever you want to call it, the opportunities that I'd had and taken advantage of, and looking forward, the limitations I felt with those opportunities. And I already kind of felt that Austin had been so good to me and has been so good to me, and that for me personally, there was the way the city had been changing so rapidly, and the surplus of musicians and the economy of it was already at a state that I had my flags up and like, okay, I don't know where this is going. And now the COVID situation has hit. So you're a real pillar in the city, and you're kind of synonymous with its any number of facets of it. But I just want to get a take from you on where we stand, and you are in touch with a lot of musicians, and how you would recommend musicians moving forward, or the way you see things moving forward. Any kind of insight you may have would be very interesting to me.
well, that's a pretty loaded thing.
Yeah, I
And
apologize for not consolidating that
yes,
question.
it's okay. What the most functional thing I could say, and I want to be really poignant, is we are learning as a society that when the time comes, when those healthier good times come, and we feel confident to be around each other, we are learning that togetherness and social interaction is a precious commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be just going to the park, going to concerts, going to movie theaters. So everything has a value that we may have not picked up on. So what I'm getting at with that is the value is will these nightclubs also have value. The bands have value. The solo artists have values. The event has value. So I'm really looking forward to seeing and doing what I can to work with groups like the Red River Cultural District to try to excite what kind of opportunities that can happen in the live music, indie rock venue, and I'm not so much tied into the music festival world. Most of my bands are playing, indie rock clubs. So that would be a Mohawk, or anything from Mohawk to a Radio Coffee. That's where the bands I'm working with are playing, or Antones, or Hotel Vegas of all, Beerland historically, those types of places. And then they graduate to bigger stages and go into Paramount and beyond, then they become more of a touring act. But just seeing the opportunity to look at how other cities exist, and how Like if it's a nightclub in Tokyo, there's no way that 4 drummers are bringing their drum kit to that nightclub for the concert tonight. There's a backline drum kit. There's a backline bass system. It just so I really would love to see smarter consistency and how these indie rock concerts in these venues can behave, because it is not synonymous. Going to a nightclub and party until the cows come home and, leaving at 2 a.m. is not the same thing as going to hear music. And I know we say see music, but I would really love to find out what can happen when the nightclubs are focusing the shows happening maybe earlier, and there's a quicker turnaround. And there is something we talked about in this interview, but the awe factor of it. If the show starts it has 3 bands and they're sharing a lot of the heavy pieces, the drum kit, the bass amps, they're all kind of shared. So the turnover is quite quick. But, maybe the first band is on at 9. By the time the third band finishes, it's 11:15. And people that need to go to work, and getting rest is a part of staying healthy. And people in a large city, becoming large city like Austin, don't just have one job. They have 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And a music fan and a citizen of Austin or any other city, they shouldn't have to put their sleep in peril to be able to come support us or the city they believe in. So, 11:15, the music is done. It goes into a DJ set, and the people that would just want to socialize and, drink a few beers till 2 a.m. Well, that's a different service. But I would love to see those not be force fed upon the music fan. So we have bar fans and we have music fans coming together. There is a crossover where they interact, but they don't have to. And if you had a great time at the music portion of the evening, and which is done at 11:15, and you want to stay and socialize all night, that's your freedom to do that, but it shouldn't be imposed upon you out of fear just to sell alcohol.
That's interesting stuff. Hey, so you mentioned the Red River. This is one thing I've been thinking about. I think a lot of people are in our position are talking about this, thinking about this. You mentioned you're on the Red River District, and for people who don't know, that's a live music stretch that encompasses a lot of live music venues that are closed, obviously, and in peril. So do you think, and this goes for a lot of different aspects of the economy in general. I mean, you see people looking for government support of some of these places, and that's understandable, but with it seems like indefinite time that this is going to go on. It doesn't seem like it's going to stop anytime soon. Is getting government help to put Band-Aids on this the right thing? Or do you think maybe we should all just think about literally, I know people have to pay rent, and that's a big thing. So maybe there's some thing that could be addressed between rent and property. Maybe that should be the core focus, and just kind of shut things down for whatever it is, 6 months, a year, what have you, because I mean, from a whatever you want to call it, more conservative or economical standpoint, if a city government or a state government or a federal government is going to pump millions and millions and whatever it is, billions of dollars into keeping things basically in a coma, I mean, that money in the end will just be, it will go, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, if what I'm excited about is what a music venue can evolve into. Now, and one of the things I was scratching the surface on is really defining the different customer bases it has at different hours of the day or evening. My first synopsis only took us from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m. One of the things that it can be quite difficult with businesses that have an alcohol license, super difficult.
Right.
But having all ages, portions of entertainment. I mean, it's like the most mind-bending rock show of all types of genres, for all ages bands to play, for fans to come to it, or it's even the same bill that starts at 9. It starts, maybe, it's a portion. We need to have youth be able to come experience music. One of the things I love that Mohawk has done is they've had like Mexican wrestler matches, and
they do a lot of kid show stuff too as well. Yeah.
And so I think there's something about them and how precious of a commodity they are, that they can be an amazing shape-shifting cultural event space in these hours that we've never even imagined them having importance to us. And so, like, maybe there's a pop-up, independent record label, kind of, bazaar. Anything that they can do to look at their business in a new way and bring us together in some kind of creative endeavor. And if it has to do with film or songwriting, seminars, like, seriously, it's wide open to what these spaces can do. So, sure, there might be a temporary coma kind of essence to it, but as it becomes more of an opportunity to get bodies in these buildings, finding out what they can do to really up their importance to a larger group of people besides just a bunch of dude bros with guitars.
Sure, but I'm talking more about COVID specifically and the challenges of COVID and the fact that there seems to be no end date in this. And do we expect the government, whether you're right or left, they're doing the best they can, and it's like, are they just going to foot the bill for an indefinite coma of not only the music industry but a lot of industries? I mean, is that out of fair is not the right word? I mean, should we just shut things? I mean, they're shut down, but is there a way to kind of just put a pin in the whole industry until it makes sense to do it, rather than just have all the taxpayers and the governments cough up millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars just to keep things in an indefinite coma?
I've heard a lot of different points of view on this very subject matter.
Yeah.
And one of the ones, of course, the brilliant part of this is the most innocent idea. Well, somebody's got to pay for it. And so I understand that me just running my mouth, I haven't sat there and done the book work on how to present this as a functional idea. But the idea is that cities themselves take the stress off of these landlords that own these institutions that are renting them out to be music venues. I mean, it's not that the people that own these properties are inherently evil. They have bank payments to make, but as a city, individual cities, do we, and this includes Austin, do we want to ensure that there is going to be that metric for live music and music business even beyond? So it is an interesting question that people have brought up. Should the cities buy these properties and ultimately become a landlord of sorts? I'm not sure. But I just, when I did hear that concept, I found it quite fascinating.
Yeah, tough situation. Nobody's got the right answers because there doesn't seem to be any right now. But, well, Frenchie, I'd love to get you back on here. We can tap into all the stuff we didn't get to tap in, because I know you've had a long, illustrious, entertaining career that we can get deeply into. But I really appreciate you being with me here today. And
thanks, Sam.
Look forward to seeing you in about
the world of Sam Pace. I'm an honored participant.
Thank you, brother. We'll see you next time, and I'll see you in about a week and a half.